that totally resonates with me because I think, it just reminds me of the necessity of creativity. Like, I think if all of us mapped out, like, oh, we want this exact same life, like, nobody would be satisfied, even if it was like the grandest of lives. So, why would we ever actually try and manipulate our experiences so it ended up in that way, right? Like, I would much rather it to be more, whether it be authentic and use creative tendencies and follow that trajectory and hit the Pacific Ocean instead of the bullseye, if that's actually and I think in some ways, like, I find it actually really easy to relate all these things back to high performance. And I don't know if it's because I'm like, I've blinded myself in some way, but I think that if you're all of a sudden looking for this creative momentum, or you're looking for all these different things, that will then allow you to perform differently on the court and in life and show up differently in life. I think, and I had I was doing a podcast like a while back, and it was about kind of about, goal setting, I guess, as well. And they asked me, like, oh, so what's your goal when you're in a game? Like, what's your goal now? Like, what do you want from volleyball, or what do you want that to look like? And I was like, my number one objective now is to be just as present as I can be, as creative as I can be, as, it's not, before it was like win every point, win the game, win the tournament, win. I keep getting battery mode on my phone. And I think when those are your objectives, you're very limited in what that means. They're very black and white. It's very, oh, if you don't get that, then that's potentially bad. If you do get it, that's good. Which like, when you actually get it, can be just as detrimental to when you don't. And I don't like a setup where if you achieve your goal, then it's detrimental, right? Like, that seems almost counterintuitive. So instead, if I'm like, oh, I want to be as present as I can be in a game, and I want to be as creative, and I kind of was equating it to, being more of an artist. And obviously I'm going off in a pretty big tangent here, but I would rather be, as a player, more creative, more in the moment, more that, than so structured on winning this point in this game. Because this will lead to, at the end of the game, I'll be able to evaluate it differently, right? Because there's no, and I think being a setter in volleyball is another great example of this, because scoring the point is typically out of my control, right? And kind of similar to basketball a little bit, but I can't set the perfect game and win the game, right? I can set the perfect game and lose, or I could set a very bad game and win, right? Which all of a sudden sets up this different frame of reference of what a good game is then, right? And maybe it isn't just the winning aspect of it. Of course, that is the aim, but I just love this idea of, and I think in that book, Stealing Fire, it's all about like flow states and creating these different states. And I want to be in that. Like, when I'm playing, I want to be in a flow state. I don't want to be in this analytical winning the game state, because, and it's also funny when I say that, it's not like in the flow state, I'm not analyzing, or I'm not responding. All of that's still happening. It's just happening more organically. It's not me forcing those situations into themselves. And I just love that. I love that.
I love that as well. And I'm sure you've probably worked with your sports psych, and we have as well, with using like specific cue words, like you kind of mentioned. I know mine for the last couple of years has been enjoy and lead. And regardless of what circumstance I'm in, whether I'm really enjoying it or things are not going so great in the game, I can kind of refocus my attention to those two words, and they have a greater meaning than scoring the point or winning the game, both of which obviously I want to do, but it's not going to happen every day. And how do I react? How can I accept what's going on? I'm more liable to accept missing all my baskets and losing the game than I am to accept not fulfilling my role as a leader and not recognizing how blessed I am to do what I do as a job. So I think that really, like you said, helps reframe the situation and also liberates you to be more present and available to do exactly what you're required to do on the court.
100%. And I think when you can reframe like that, it will lead to the performance that you're hoping to get. Like, I think you being so stuck on, oh, I better make all these shots is not as conducive to high performance, right? Like, I don't,
No.
and I'm also going off of my experience. I know I'm setting my worst when I'm very much in my head about what I'm going to set and then evaluating that in that moment, right? I'm much better when I can go, oh yeah, that was a bad set. I'm going to do this differently. Like, that's fine. Or, oh, that was a bad decision because this, and I can accept that in the moment and then be fully present for the next moment. Right? It's like the worst when you get in your own head and spiral. And like you even mentioned earlier, that's when you end up choking, right? Is when you're stuck in that perpetual state of almost like angst, right? When you're like, oh, I have to make this shot. Right. And I think that goes, and I think this is why I love the whole like sport and life thing. I think that is the exact same in life. If you're like, oh, I have to have this by this age, or I need to get this promotion, or I need this from whatever relationship. Like, I need my friend to respond this way. Well, that's obviously not conducive to the maximizing the potential of that relationship or that friendship, right? Like, you're putting this weird contract in that isn't necessarily agreed on. When if you're coming from a state of, oh, I want to lead, or like, how are my actions actually resembling the values that I want to live through? All of a sudden, that's a totally different, angle of how you're looking at the situation.